Hi everybody, hope you're all keeping well. Today's video I'm going to talk briefly about the term depression and try and give a little bit more clarity about some of the symptoms that you may experience when you are suffering with depression, and also clarifying what kind of those depressive symptoms mean in relation to getting diagnosed with clinical depression. As we spoke of before, we can experience some of these symptoms in our day-to-day lives at different intensities, so mild, moderate and severe. But you'll see the little bit of a difference in terms of someone suffering from depressive symptoms, maybe in isolation, one or two, and then all the way to, unfortunately, the kind of extreme end of the scale where people are suffering from clinical depression. So some of the symptoms that are generally acknowledged and agreed upon by psychologists and psychiatrists in terms of symptoms of depression. So you can see there the main one where the name comes from. So depressed mood most of the day, so feeling low, feeling down. A loss of interest or pleasure for most of the day as well. So you're not gaining as much kind of fun or enjoyment from things. You're not laughing maybe as much as you usually would. A change in weight and appetite. So again, this can maybe kind of change in terms of your own weight and if you're being able to manage your own weight in a good way. But another way of looking at it is in terms of that appetite. So has your appetite changed in recent kind of weeks or days? That's a really good indication that something isn't quite right. You're not as hungry as you may usually be. Insomnia, so you can't sleep, you've struggle getting to sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night with thoughts on your mind. And then you also have hypersomnia, so the opposite of that. So you sleep for excessive periods of time, you always feel tired, you feel sleepy during the day, and again, it's a change from what you normally feel. Psychomotor agitation, so that's just a couple of words for kind of things like rocking, scratching, sort of very physical behaviors, and that are showing kind of there's some sort of challenge or issue kind of affecting you. Loss of energy, fatigue, so pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, you're just not able to do things. You're always tired. Again, it's affecting your motivation. You don't really want to maybe go out and go for a run or go to work, different things like that. You just don't feel like you have the petrol in the tank for it. Worthlessness or guilt, so these are more of the sort of thoughts that can come in into your mind. So lacking a sense of value of what you're doing, potentially for worthlessness, and then guilt, feeling guilty for things that you might have said, you might have done, or that you felt you should have said or you felt you should have done, and feel kind of guilt around those areas. Impaired concentration or indecisiveness, so this might look more towards the performance of your daily jobs, and maybe racing, so you're not able to focus as much or to the same degree that you could before, really affecting your attention. And then indecisiveness, so you can't even come to conclusion on a lot of things, and you're struggling to really kind of commit to one thing or another. And then the final one, which is probably the most serious one in terms of depression, so recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideations. Obviously this is a considerably significant and serious experiences for someone to be faced with. So that's obviously a big sign that someone's suffering from depression. So as I said, we can maybe experience one or two of these in isolation, and from mild, moderate and severe degrees in isolation once or twice, or every now and again. But when these sort of converge in more than 5, that's when someone can be described as suffering from clinical depression. So how we diagnose someone with clinical depression, if we see the next slide, generally a psychologist or psychiatrist will sit down with a person and discuss their experiences. But these are 4 ways that a professional in the mental health industry can help to diagnose someone with clinical depression. So if we look there, number 1, so from the previous slide, those symptoms that we described, 5 or more out of those 9 symptoms, and one has to be one of depressed mood and or loss of interest or pleasure. They need to be present. So 5 or more has to be one of them in the same 2-week period. So most of the time over the period of 2 weeks. Each of the symptoms that the individual is experiencing represents a significant change from the way they normally function, the way they normally act behave in relationships and in their job, etc. like that, and also needs to be present every day. And number 3, the symptoms cause significant distress or impairment. So you really kind of experiencing anguish and kind of you don't want to feel this way. It's also stopping you from your relationships with friends, family. It's impairing how you do your job in terms of maybe those indecisiveness or lack of concentration that we spoke about on the previous slide. And then finally, the episode is not attributable to a substance, so alcohol or drugs, or a medical condition that someone is going through. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more clarity. So in terms of those symptoms and the diagnosis, and then when someone who feels that they may be struggling with depression sits down and those areas are kind of recognised and diagnosed by a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, it's then that the individual can be diagnosed with being challenged with depression, and they will then move the conversation on to trying to support that individual to get through that depressive episode and give them the right tools to be able to cope. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit. If any of these issues you recognise in yourself or in others and you feel you want more support, more information, check out the PGA website and Healthy Mind. My contact details will be at the end of this video, as well as supporting Chance and Changing Mind, who are the PGA's mental health partners. Thank you very much for watching.